So for me, the hardest video game ever, a text-based version of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and honestly, one of my favourite book series, so I thought I'd give it a whirl. It was such a mistake. It was a bigger mistake than having Ewan. Like, I sat down and thought, okay, I'll use logic, and it was like, what do you want to do? I don't know, get out of bed. You haven't opened your eyes, so you fall out of bed. Right? Open your eyes. You're in a room. Okay, what's in the room? Blah, 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 blah. And it goes on and on, really pedantic. It's like, imagine if Benji was like guiding you around. It was just like that, the little things of like, because I haven't said it, I can't do it. So therefore I had to be like, put on your bathrobe because it says that you wouldn't want to go outdoors naked. And then eventually you get your little towel, you get on the spaceship, and then, you get to do the bloody Babelfish or Babelfish, however you pronounce it. The puzzle for that is infuriating. There's a machine that you've got to press it and it drops a little fish that you pop in your ear and it basically just goes like, you now know every single language. And I'm like, cool, brilliant. Okay, so what do I need to do to get this one out? Well, why don't you press the button and find out? So you press the button and it falls just straight down and a little robot comes out and sweeps up straight away. Oh, that's a bit annoying. Yeah, it is f***ing annoying. And then you basically just like press it again and the robot still comes out. Press it a third time. Oh, sorry, you've run out. The vending machine's empty. Game over. So you restart the game, you go through all of it again, you get back to the vending machine, you get a little bucket, you put it there and you catch it, but another one flies in, a little robot and grabs it and goes up. It was the most infuriating game. I couldn't beat it, and I swear to Christ that it's led me on the dark path that brought me to WhatCulture, because it changed my thinking. I realised that logic only gets you so far in life. You've got to be a little bit mad. Sometimes you've got to stab a fool.
A lot of people immediately jump to some like really mechanical games, like mechanically difficult games like Dark Souls or Battletoads, but we've practiced a generally like easier one of Rich's Sonic quizzes. So
whoa, there he is.
10 out of 10, 10 out of 10 without even like the options and multiple choices.
I think you'll find I gave you that quiz and you got one question wrong, so...
It was a badly worded question. But no, for me, some of the hardest games that I've played, ones I could pick, something like Ikaruga, which is Treasure's bullet hell game, which is like, it's both angelic and demonic, where you have to switch polarities, more than a swingers party in Krakow. Another one that comes to mind that not many people talk about these days is Echo, The Tides of Time, where it's a complete pelagic peril. You spend literally the entire game not being able to breathe, which isn't ideal, and you've got this like oppressive Pink Floyd style soundtrack. It's literally suffocating.
It's terrifying when you get to the alien ship at the end.
Oh, it's ridiculous. You start flying as a dolphin through space, through tubes. Check out, it's good. But the actual hardest game I've ever played is, and although I absolutely adore Sierra and I think Roberta Williams is an icon of the industry, it's King's Quest.
Oh,
it's King's Quest 5 in particular. Let me give you an example of one of the puzzles in that game. So at one point you're in the mountains and you get approached by a Yeti. So how would you deal with a Yeti? Maybe, I don't know, use a weapon, push it off the cliff, run away?
Say you're a mythical creature, you don't exist.
You could try and bargain your way out with an existential question, yeah. But what you actually do is you repeat an old Three Stooges skit and throw a custard pie in its face. That's the solution. There's another puzzle where you're stuck in a forest and the only way you can get out is by putting some peanut butter on the floor and then putting gems on it, and then this fairy comes and takes you. That's the sort of thing we're talking about. In King's Quest 6, you get to the very end of the game, you're locked in a room, and if you didn't pick up the key when you're in hell in a different chapter, that's it, you're done for, you've got to start again. So it's King's Quest, or more accurately, I can't say it. But,
Go for it, say it.
King's cretin.
You know what, this one threw me for a loop this morning, because obviously you go to something like Dark Souls or Super Meat Boy, and while those games I thought they were hard, I eventually got the hang of. But again, that's been haunting me for 20 years and counting, I guess, is the original Rayman. It was one of the first games. It's so hard. It's one of the first games I ever played as a kid. And it was obviously doubly hard back then because it is difficult. It's a difficult platform. You need to have your timing absolutely correct. Your jumps need to be pitch perfect. And it's a very sort of kinetic game. You never really stop. It's very sort of energetic. You don't really have time to sort of do the Tomb Raider thing and stop dead in your tracks and assess a jump and go for it. You have to do it while the momentum is already up. And it's really hard to get your head around. And especially back in the day, you've got things that hamper it, like saves and lives that knock you back a whole load of progress if you do end up dying, which is doubly frustrating. So I had some unfinished business with this game, and then the PlayStation Classic was coming out at the end of last year, so I thought, oh, you know what, I'll get this for Christmas, and I'll go back and I'll see if it was as difficult as I thought it was going to be. It was even worse. I opened it up Christmas morning, playing it, I thought, right, I'm going to just smash you in one sitting. I didn't.
You talked to the game with your missus?
Well, it was the game first, Mrs. second, it's Christmas Day, So I thought I was going to complete it, and I ended up just getting to the same place I got to as a kid, because I distinctly remember it's the music area.
Music melodies.
Yes.
Bongo Hills, it's called. Very, very apt, I thought. That's where my entire persona came from. It is so difficult. The spikes, every single part of it, from the sound effects to the enemies, have sort of given me this kind of negative reinforcement. I associate the happy, joyous beats of music with death and terror and being set back. There are little kind of, I don't know what they are, fruit that you sort of walk along and you jump on it and you get across rivers on them. And it's so hard and fiddly to do, and you always end up in the water, and I was getting so frustrated. I remember Christmas morning when I was 24 years old, my dad on the couch watching me fail at this game over and over again, and he's just taking the piss out of me from behind me. And he says oh, Josh, I thought you were good at games. I thought you'd do this for a living. And I was like, 1, that's a common misconception. I don't actually play games at work. 2, no, you do it. You couldn't do it 20 years ago. I remember you watching it. I remember you watching me, Dad, and me watching you. None of us got past Bongo Hills, and I still haven't, and I bet you can't either.
There is a recent game that came out in 2017, and it was your favourite game of the year, I think, Rich, in 2017?
What?
Getting Over It.
Oh God, favourite? No!
I thought it was your all-time
Oh God, no.
in 2017. But anyway, if you don't know what it is, you're basically in a big pot and you're controlling a man with a sledgehammer, and you literally just do that all the time, and it's so hard to control. It's ridiculous. You can spend about 20-30 minutes trying to get up a mountain, and it will just wash away in one tiny small mistake, and you fall all the way back down to the beginning. It's a good game. It's really hard to control. When you get your head around it, you can complete it in about 4 minutes, 5 minutes. It's when you're speedrunning it, that is, for the top elite players, but I'm never going to get there. And also another game that I used to play a lot of back in the day on the PS2, Stuntman. That was a great game. You basically drive and be part of a film set where you drive into obstacles, do jumps, do jump through trains and that sort of stuff. The first level is a bit hard to get used to, but then you get to the second level and you have to jump into a chimney stack, jump through a train. You have to drive underneath smokestacks as they're collapsing, and yeah, it's such a hard game. You have to time everything perfectly, and you get it into the right time, and you also have to make sure you're not damaging your car to just progress it through the level. And yeah, it's extremely hard, especially using the PS2 controller when it's capped around 15-20 frames per second, because it wasn't optimized very well with the PS2. But yeah, it's so hard to control, and I loved it back in the day, but I could never fully complete it. It's great, but very hard.
The hardest video game I've ever played is one that doesn't get spoken about a lot. Actually, I've never heard anyone else ever bring it up. It is called Prison, Chapter 1, The Dark Unicorn. Now, I will cast your minds back to a young Ash, young and wee, with little hair, much smaller, much shorter. I'm playing on my PlayStation 2, having a lovely time, thinking, wow, what sort of lovely game can I play today? Head on down to my local Blockbuster, have a look at the rows and rows of potential opportunities that could lighten up my evening. I find one, I look at it, I think, wow, a video game with a unicorn on the front. I love this is so cute. There's a little troll riding a unicorn. It's got wings, there's magic, there's fantasy. What a charming tale. I take it back, I put it in my PlayStation. And it's not a charming tale of unicorns and niceness and fantasy. It's literally hell in a disc. You get in, and both of your characters are controlled by 2 different analog sticks. So basically, your controller is half one thing and half the other. So you get on the back of this damn unicorn that's been talking, doing loads of sass at you for the whole time. Get on it, start riding around, trying to jump through these little hoops, like these little floating sparkly circles as the tutorial. This is just a tutorial. And you have to try and get through that, and all you do is just smack off the walls because it's so incredibly difficult to do. And you've got to try and cast spells with all the different buttons and angles and everything. So you basically got to mishmash this controller into one scrambled heap of fingers that doesn't work. It's not coherent. It's really, really freaking hard. And if you manage to get through the tutorial, it then opens up this massive, long, extensive path full of trolls and goblins and plague-ridden creatures that then try and attack you whilst you're trying to do your scrambled fingered running through thing. Hours I spent on this opening level, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on Prism, the dark unicorn, and it's just not worth it. It's haunted my dreams ever since. I have nightmares about unicorns, thinking back to this horrible, horrible experience I had of Carrick the frickin' troll and Prism the unicorn trying to ride through the Plague Lands. It's horrible, it's really bad, it's really hard. Don't play it.
Well, I'm trying to think of stuff that I haven't finished, trying to think of stuff that I've gone up against and then just gone, nope, there's just no way I'm going to be able to do it. Although I have that thing deep inside me where I can't admit that I can't beat something, I have to do it. Like, even if I have to lock myself in our room until I finally get through it, I will eventually get there. So consider both these games as works in progress. Although one of them I did eventually get. So in terms of difficulty in games, I'm thinking 1001 Spikes, which is just a stupidly hard 2D platformer where you just have to go down a series of corridors where the levels pulsate with 1001 spikes, and unless you're standing in the exact right place at the exact right time, you're dead and back to the beginning. And there's like keys and tokens and stuff to get along the levels, but I've barely got through any of that because, like I said, unless you get it exactly pixel pinpoint precise, you're dead and it sucks. But I tried it because it was kind of in the vein of Super Meat Boy and whatever. I barely got through that, but I would go with 1001 Spikes if you just want a ludicrously hard 2D platformer or a ludicrously hard set of gameplay mechanics that are just ludicrously hard. The other thing which just broke my mind was The Witness, which I love. I absolutely love that game, and I did eventually get through it, although at the very end I had to start consulting a walkthrough because you literally have to reconceptualize everything from how you perceive sound and space and color and framing and shapes. Like, you have to recontextualize reality to figure that game out. The way Jonathan Blow, the creative director, is an absolute genius and hired a whole bunch of architects to figure out that game's geography and the way that it maps and the way you move through it and everything. But all the puzzles in that game are different locations around the island, and they focus on different things, whether it might be something like sound or a particular shape you're trying to figure out, but you can't even see the shape that you're trying to see in the darkness until you draw the line around it, or whatever. And the way that the puzzles go by the end of it, I was just completely lost. It was just, it's completely insane. So I would say there's two strands to this. I would have ludicrously hard gameplay stuff and just completely incomprehensible. I can't even figure out what he's asking me to do, Mr. Blow. So I tried, but it would be both of them.
The hardest game ever, right, is not a game that you can just, practice makes perfect. Even something as hard as Rayman, one day, if you do it enough, you'll get it. The hardest game ever is something you can't predict, and it's a roguelike. It's Binding of Isaac. It is the hardest game ever. This is kind of like a tie. We've got Binding of Isaac. I would also like to highlight Darkest Dungeon, which arguably maybe is even more difficult, purely because of the randomness of it. So with Isaac, just to start, I've played that game, gotta be 100 hours. And I was playing it on the train back from London the other day thinking, I'm good at this game. 100 hours, I've completed Mega Satan that one time. I've completed, I've beat Isaac and I've beat all the other horrific bosses. No, 3-hour train back from London, I had 1 successful run and about 12 fails. It is the hardest game ever, purely just because you can be good as anything at it, but if you get bad luck, you are skumped, mate. You're skumped. You're skumped all over the floor, just ash all over the floor.
What?
Skumped. Darkest Dungeon is another one. So I would call Darkest Dungeon a roguelike. I'm not sure what else you would call it. It's bizarre. It's a turn-based, team-based, class-based bullshit.
It's just an exercise in hell.
Darkest Dungeon is an exercise in hell. That's a good way of generalizing it. So you literally get your 4 adventurers and you take them into a random dungeon full of random enemies, full of random traps, and if they die, that's it. They're dead, and you have to go and recruit more. It's so difficult. And try as I may, try as I might, I just can't do it because you can practice all you want. Then you can just open up this random dungeon and it's just bullshit. So you're all over the place. It's so hard. Give me Dark Souls. Give me Dark Souls any day of the week. I'll play it with one hand. No Darkest Dungeon. It's too dark.
Everyone has said, or will have said, depending on what order this goes in, talked about Soulsborne games. Personally, I try them. Meh. Bloodborne and Sekiro, I'm like, yeah, I just need a bit more time. Dark Souls, I'm slowly grinding my way through. Thank you, Rach. I've beaten the Taurus demons, therefore I've beat the whole game. All good. Ever played Vermintide on Legend? That's pretty tough. But typically for me, when I look at this in a different perspective, and that's not necessarily about a game specifically that is difficult, it's the idea that the whole game itself is just going to be so daunting that it scares people away. In my years on YouTube and me plugging the same games over and over again, go and play Planet Coaster, it's fantastic. It scares people off because of just how much is there. It seems so difficult because there's like a billion things to try and keep on top of and to get your head around. It scares people off. It has a good tutorial, but not every game has that. And for me personally, the game that I bought to play with my friends that I was like, cool, I'm gonna get this, and was just like, whoa, have I dropped myself in the deep end here, was Factorio, which I've talked about on a list about addictive games that just time disappears when you play it. It's one of those games where you boot it up and you land in the world, you get a very basic introduction as to what things do, and it just goes, go. And that scares people. People don't like that. People like to be led in. That's why I got Sekiro, because I heard it was going to lead me into the game better, and it kind of did, but I'm still bad at it. But Factorio is one of those games where there's just so much. There are hundreds and hundreds of different things you need to learn and get your head around, and to some people that is nigh on impossible. I've managed to get past that big step of Factorio. I got past the big step with Planet Coaster, but there are certain games that I haven't. Things like Civilization, those kind of games. They're things I just never clicked with them, and it's sort of I found it really difficult to understand how these games work. I have the same with things like City Skylines. There's another thing that it doesn't click, and therefore I just find it so hard to get my head around. And that's basically all difficulty is. It's just finding it hard to grasp the concept of the whole game itself. But Factorio for me was the first time that really happened, that I felt like completely out of my depth, and getting over that was the best feeling in the world. Stick to it. You can do it. Can't you, Rich? You can beat Dark Souls, can't you?
Hey everybody, just to let you guys know that you only have a few days left to submit your questions for our Chatty Faces number 52. We've been going for a whole year. So there are 3 ways that you can get your questions to us. Either go on Twitter and use the hashtag ChattyFaces52, find us on Discord, or just leave them down in the YouTube comments below. But be nice, or not be nice, and I'll answer whatever you can think of. There are only a few days left, but we'll see you next Friday.